Today, the two little red-headed boys kidnapped and murdered by Hamas in 2023 were laid to rest with their mother in Israel. They were buried in the same casket so that they would always be together. We only found out very recently what happened to those two youngest hostages kidnapped by Hamas on October 7, 2023. The two little boys taken hostage on October 7 were murdered by terrorists in, quote, cold blood, end quote, with bare hands sometime the following month in November, according to an investigation by Israel's National Institute of Forensic Medicine. More detail was provided by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said, quote, they strangled the tender boys with their bare hands. A wave of grief has gripped Israel and the international Jewish community, and the orange color of the little boy's hair has become a symbol of both profound pain and solidarity with all of the victims, even as pro-Hamas protests lionize their killers. Those two little boys, 4-year-old Ariel and 9-month-old Kfir, have come to symbolize the suffering of an entire people. But let's start at the beginning for those of you who are not aware of this horrifying story. On October 7, as part of their assault on Israeli civilians in multiple locations, Hamas swarmed the Nir Oz kibbutz in southern Israel near the Gaza border. Over 1,200 people were butchered that day and 251 were kidnapped. Among those seized from their homes were 34-year-old Jonathon Bibas, his 32-year-old wife Shari, and their two little boys, Ariel and Kfir. Video of the terrified mother clutching her boys went viral at the time. I remember watching it on October 7, and this video went everywhere because this one short clip encapsulated the horror and the terror felt not only by the victims, but by those who were forced to watch that video helplessly, knowing that this mother and her boys had been seized and that there was nothing that they could do to rescue them. One other clip of them still alive in Gaza was released. Here is the mother, her two children, and the baby kidnappers who dragged them from their home. Let me pause here to remind you, many Canadian academics and activists, to our everlasting shame, for they do not feel any, defended this at the time, long before Israel's military campaign to recover these hostages even began. They saw Shari and her little boys in that video clip that you just saw, and they defended that. I did almost an entire episode earlier just detailing all of the responses of Canadian professionals and elite academics from some of our most prestigious institutions defending what Hamas did after seeing this video before Israel even went in to retrieve the kidnapped and to punish the kidnappers. I was at the Toronto Holocaust Museum earlier this week, and the young woman at the desk told me that she had been racked with grief all week, thinking about the Bibas family as we finally have their fate confirmed, the fate that we had long suspected. And she repeatedly thanked us for coming to visit because she says there are so few non-Jewish allies in this incredibly dark time in Canada for Jewish people, she said. I asked another man who was there at the Holocaust Museum. Both of his parents are Holocaust survivors. He has many Holocaust survivor relatives. And I asked him, what has it been like in Canada for Jewish people after October 7? And all he said with tears in his eyes were really, really bad. Not only was October 7 the largest slaughter of Jews in a single day since the Holocaust, celebrated and justified by many Canadians, but Canadian Jews have now found themselves constantly targeted ever since, with even Jewish elementary schools being targeted with gunshots. My Jewish friends have confirmed this, and the hatred that they have faced simply for being Jewish is a national shame. Another man said that he covers his yarmulke with a baseball cap when he goes out in public in Canadian cities to avoid being targeted. And yet this is barely discussed. Almost no politician is addressing this directly and as forcefully as the problem deserves. To go back to the story of the Bibas family, Yarden Bibas and his wife and children were separated right away, with Yarden held by Hamas and Shari and the boys handed over to another militant terrorist group. Then they vanished. Nobody knew what had happened to them. First, Hamas claimed that they were killed in an Israeli airstrike, but this could not be verified. Hamas then released a psychological torture video of Yarden Bibas being told that his family had been killed and breaking down with grief, although he later said that he had only done this under coercion. Yarden was finally released on February 1, 2025, after being held hostage for 484 days. But his family was not waiting for him. When Hamas finally confirmed that Kfir Bibas and her boys had been murdered and would be returned as corpses, nobody was certain for sure that they were not lying. Perhaps this was just more psychological warfare to cause Yarden and all Israelis more torment. On February 20, however, Hamas hosted a celebratory rally to turn the coffins of the Bibas family over to Israel in exchange for imprisoned criminals. That is the trades that are going on right now. Israel is literally trading people who are imprisoned for violence in exchange for the bodies of people who have been murdered, in exchange for the victims of violence. And the footage of this rally was truly grotesque to watch. There was music pounding, and people turned out to smile and cheer as the coffins were placed on a stage. What I noticed right away when I saw the footage is that Hamas placed the two little boys in adult-sized coffins to avoid the PR nightmare of turning tiny caskets back over to the authorities. That would be a horrifying visual that even Hamas wanted to ignore. The backdrop showed Benjamin Netanyahu dripping in blood and repeated the now verifiably false claim that the Bibas family had been killed by an airstrike. And it's been frustrating to watch people repeat these claims, even during the week of the Bibas funeral, saying, well, they were probably actually killed by an airstrike. They weren't strangled to death and then had their bodies mutilated to cover up this crime. And that avoids the central question, why were they in Gaza? Why were two little boys, an 8-month-old and a 4-year-old, and their mother in Gaza to begin with? And it's because they were kidnapped from their homes by militants who had been on an orgy of rape, murder, and torture in civilian communities. So this is not the defense that those repeating it seem to think that it is. Hamas are kidnappers of women and children, and these people were torn from their homes, and to pour salt in the wound at this farcical, vile ceremony, and they chose the celebratory music to play during this ceremony, Hamas put labels on the coffins of the two little boys and of Shari, and on those coffins it read, date of arrest, October 7, 2023. And there was still one more final tormented twist in this sad saga. The dead woman sent to Israel turned out not to be Shari, and they could not trace her DNA to any of the other hostages or their families either. Instead, it turns out the woman in the coffin labeled with Shari's name and the date of arrest was an unidentified Palestinian woman. Israel demanded Shari back, and the correct body was sent the following day on February 21 without any fanfare. As it turns out, the Red Cross can actually retrieve the bodies of murdered Israelis without having a carnival of celebration and a farcical ceremony in the process. Now, Yarden Bibas wanted, understandably, a quiet funeral attended by only a few friends and family so that he could bury his wife and sons. But he published the funeral route so that Israelis could vent their grief, and thousands took to the streets once again to watch the family go by for the last time, to watch the caskets go by to their final resting place, waving flags, waving the color of orange, which has become the symbol now of the hostage crisis. These two little boys have encapsulated what Israel has gone through. And to justify what Hamas did on October 7, you have to justify what happened to them. And it has been sickening to see how many people are willing to do that. Finally, they have been laid to rest, and Yarden will be left to grieve in their yawning absence. And he is now, of course, the final survivor of his little family. I want to close by reading for you the English translation of the eulogy that Yarden Bibas gave for his family in Israel today. There's video footage of this eulogy posted online. I found a translation in English. These are the final words of a bereaved husband and a bereaved father to his wife and his two little boys, who, as I mentioned, are being buried in the same casket. He begins, speaking to his wife, "I remember the first time I said mi amor to you. It was at the very beginning of our relationship. You told me to only call you that if I was certain I loved you. not to say it carelessly. I didn't say it then because I didn't want you to think I was rushing to say I love you. Shari, I'll confess to you now that I already loved you back then when I said mi amor. Shari, I love you and will always love you. You are everything to me. You are the best wife and mother there could be. Shari, you are my best friend. Mish, who will help me make decisions now? How am I supposed to make decisions without you? Do you remember our last decision together? In the safe room, I asked if we should fight or surrender. You said fight, so I fought. Shari, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. If only I had known what would happen, I wouldn't have fired. I think about everything we went through together. There are so many beautiful memories. I remember Ariel and Kfir's births. I remember the days we would sit at home or in a cafe, just the two of us, talking for hours about everything under the sun. It was wonderful. I miss those times deeply. Your presence is profoundly missed. I want to tell you about everything that's happening in the world and here in Israel. Shari, everyone knows and loves us. You can't imagine how surreal all this madness is. Shari, people tell me they'll always be by my side, but they're not you. So please stay close to me and don't go far. Shari, this is the closest I've been to you since October 7, and I can't kiss you or hug you, and it's breaking me. Shari, please watch over me, protect me from bad decisions, shield me from harmful things, and protect me from myself. Guard me so that I do not sink into darkness. Mish, I love you. And then to his son, Ariel, you made me a father. You transformed us into a family. You taught me what truly matters in life and about responsibility. The day you were born, I matured instantly because of you. You taught me so much about myself, and I want to thank you. So thank you, my beloved. Ariel, I hope you're not angry with me for failing to protect you properly and for not being there for you. I hope you know I thought about you every day, every minute. I hope you're properly enjoying paradise. I'm sure you're making all the angels laugh with your silly jokes and impressions. I hope there are plenty of butterflies for you to watch, just like you did during our picnics. Be careful when you climb down from your cloud not to step on Tony. Teach Kfir all your impressions and make everyone laugh. Ariel, I love you. The most in the world, always in the world, just as you used to tell us. Now to the baby. Kfir, I didn't think our family could be more perfect, and then you came and made it even more perfect. I remember your birth. I remember during the delivery when the midwife suddenly stopped everything. We were frightened thought something was wrong, but it was just to tell us we had another redhead. Mom and I laughed and rejoiced. You brought more light and happiness to our little home. You came with your sweet, captivating laugh and smile, and I was instantly hooked. It was impossible not to nibble on you all the time. Kfir, I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. But I need you to know that I love you deeply and miss you terribly. I miss nibbling on you and hearing your laughter. I miss our morning games when Mom would ask me to watch you before I went to work. I cherish those little moments so much, and I miss them now more than ever. Kfir, I love you the most in the world, always in the world. I have so many more things to tell you, but I'll save them for when we're alone. Anybody who has their own children can't imagine what it would be like to give a speech like that when your whole family is in a single casket. To defend what happened on October 7, that's what you have to defend. I'm glad at least that Jonathon Bibas has the closure of being able to bury his family and to address them like this, and that the first stage in their nightmare is over. And to see people around the world mourning these boys has at least reminded us that some people are still capable of humanity. And so we wish the entire Bibas family and all those who are grieving God's support and his help in this very, very difficult time.